Mötley Crüe, the only band that could light themselves on fire and say, cozy, let's do another line. Overdoses? Check. Vehicular manslaughter? Yeah, why not? Burritos Cologne? Yup, obviously. Their groupies left with tetanus, their tour bus smelled like wet socks and childhood trauma. Yuck, this isn't rock history. It's a dumpster fire in leather pants. Welcome to Everything Wrong with Mötley Crüe. Sorry to interrupt, but if chaos, glam, and scandal are your thing, hit like and subscribe before the next meltdown starts. Thanks. Frank who? Yes, Nikki Sixx. The name that screams edgy, dangerous, and definitely not Frank Carlton Serafino Feranna Jr. A name that sounds more like your uncle's accountant than the basis for a band that once tried to out-party Ozzy Osbourne. Nicky legally ditched his birth name in the early 80s to distance himself from an abusive past and reinvent himself as a mascara-wearing cartoon villain. He picked Sixx, reportedly borrowed from a high school girlfriend's ex or a random band name, depending on which dramatic retelling he's selling that, and thus, a rock god was born. This name change wasn't just a makeover, it was a full-blown character reboot. He wasn't just avoiding his dad, he was dodging accountability like it was a drug test. And let's not forget the cherry on top. Early band bios lied about it, claiming Nikki Sixx was his real name. Because nothing says authenticity like lying about your name while snorting ants with Ozzy. Yes, snorting ants. More on that later. BYO toilet paper? Nope. Mötley Crüe's early living conditions make college dorm rooms look like five-star resorts. At one point, they were so broke and so completely indifferent to basic hygiene that they stopped buying toilet paper. What did they use instead? Oh, just the essentials: socks, band flyers, and magazines. Because nothing says rock star in the making like wiping with your own promotional material. It wasn't just growth, it was branding. Come see Mötley Crüe, now with less absorbency. Apparently, even deodorant and toothpaste were optional. Their apartment was a rotating disaster of filth, leftovers, and whatever piece of cloth hadn't been repurposed as emergency bathroom supplies. And somehow, they were still seducing groupies in this disaster zone. The smell alone could have taken out a small army. But this was Mötley Crüe. Comfort was for chumps, and cleanliness was a conspiracy. Their idea of cleaning up was using your band logo as a napkin for last week's chili fry. In any other world, this is a cautionary tale. In theirs, it's origin story gold. Home movies gone viral. The tape, do you remember the tape? Well, in case you don't, in the mid-90s, Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson's private home video got stolen from their house and leaked to the world. And by home video, we mean the kind that doesn't belong in a Disney vault. It wasn't meant for public eyes, but that didn't stop it from becoming the most infamous VHS since The Ring. The theft was real. A disgruntled contractor broke in and took the tape. But the couple's reaction was, well, very Crüe. Instead of quietly dealing with it, they became the unwilling poster couple for early viral fame, turning an actual crime into a media circus. Tommy, ever the Crüe brand ambassador, leaned into it like it was a world tour. And let's be honest, he probably got more recognition for that tape than for any drum solo he ever played. It became the celebrity scandal blueprint, privacy invasion, lawsuit, headline, repeat. Sure, it was a violation, but it also proved that Mötley Crüe's chaos didn't stop at the stage. It followed them right into the honeymoon suite, and somehow Tommy managed to be the only rock star in history to accidentally invent influencer culture, with a boat and a camcorder. Vegas cage match. You know it's a bad day when your meltdown requires Nicolas Cage to act as the voice of reason. In 2016, Vince Neil found himself in the middle of a bizarre Las Vegas incident where he was caught on camera. No ambiguity, grabbing a female fan by the hair and dragging her to the ground outside a hotel. That's not an exaggerated story from the 80s. That's actual security footage in the year of smartphones and instant YouTube uploads. What sparked it? The fan allegedly asked for an autograph from Cage, not Vince, which might be the saddest catalyst for a scuffle in history. Cage, ever the dramatic hero, had to physically pull Vince away while trying to calm him down like a substitute teacher breaking up a recess fight. Nothing says rock legend quite like being escorted off the sidewalk while a movie star plays peacemaker. Vince pleaded guilty to misdemeanor battery and was fined because consequences for crew members are apparently always available in travel size. Who knew the most shocking part of that day wasn't the assault? It was that Nicolas Cage was the most reasonable guy on the scene. Ants, urine, rock and roll. Imagine thinking, hey, let's make a biopic that really shows how gross and legendary we were. Then imagine adding a scene so exaggerated that even Ozzy Osbourne probably watched it and went, I don't remember licking what? Yep, the dirt. Ozzy snorts ants and laps up Nikki Sixx's pee by a hotel pool. It's the cinematic equivalent of a middle schooler saying, and then he totally ate a worm. Yes, there was a real incident in 1984 where Ozzy did snort a line of ants. And yes, there was a shared moment involving urine, because apparently that's what backstage bonding looked like in the 80s. But the film cranks it up to Looney Tunes levels. Nikki and Ozzy's little who can outgross the other game has become the stuff of rock legend. But like all Mötley Crüe stories, it's probably been told, retold, and turbocharged with 50% more bodily fluids each time. The true horror? It's not the ant snorting. It's realizing this was one of the tamer stories they picked for the screen. The Great Disappearing Death. The Dirt. A cinematic masterpiece where debauchery is dialed up to 11 and actual manslaughter is edited like a minor fender bender. Vince Neil's 1984 car crash, which resulted in the death of Razzle and severe injuries to 2 others, gets about as much emotional depth as a shampoo commercial. They turned a life-ending event into a quick montage between scenes of stripper poles and speedball. You know, whoops, I killed someone, cut to rehearsal footage. If you blinked during the movie, you'd miss the legal fallout, the public outrage, or any sense of real-world consequence. But that's the magic of Mötley Crüe storytelling. Everything bad becomes part of the journey, and every tragedy gets filtered through a glam rock Instagram filter. Instead of grappling with what happened, we get scenes of Vince brooding for 5 minutes, and then boom, back to cocaine and chaos. If that's redemption, I'm the Queen of England. The Dirt may be based on a true story, but only if that story is how to make yourself look like a legend while leaving out literally everything important. Mars needs better writers. The Dirt really said, Mick Mars has ankylosing spondylitis, and then treated it like he had a sore back from bad posture. The truth, Mick Mars was basically playing guitar while slowly turning into a statue. This guy was in constant, bone-grinding pain and had to be heavily medicated just to stand upright. Yet, the film portrays him as the chill, quiet dude in the corner who occasionally winces like he forgot leg day. In reality, Mars was touring the world with a spinal disease that makes yoga look like medieval torture. But sure, let's give 98% of the screen time to Nikki's eyeliner and Tommy's drum-spinning rig. Mick was the literal backbone of the band. Ironic, considering his own was fusing itself into oblivion. And they gave him the narrative depth of a footnote. If Mick had been any more underplayed in the movie, he'd have been a CGI background extra. Rock and roll may be loud, but apparently spinal diseases are just too subtle for Netflix. Kickstart my retcon. Nikki Sixx dying and coming back to life is already a pretty wild story. So naturally, The Dirt said, let's make it dumber. Yes, Nikki overdosed in 1987, was technically dead for 2 minutes, then revived with adrenaline straight to the chest. Because nothing says glam metal like a scene out of Pulp Fiction. But the movie fast forwards from dead junkie to rocking out again. Like he just took a long nap and had a protein shake. Reality check, Nikki didn't go from death to encore overnight. The actual aftermath included rehab, withdrawal, internal band drama, and the kind of soul-searching that doesn't pair well with Smoke Machine. But who has time for truth when you can cut to him belting out Kickstart My Heart like nothing happened? That song might have been inspired by his brush with death, but the movie treats it like a Starbucks-fueled comeback montage. Nikki's real recovery was messy, painful, and human. The film's version, basically a superhero origin story. He died. He rose. He shredded. Cool myth, bro. Needs more reality. Thanks for nothing, Crüe. In 2023, Mick Mars, who literally dragged his body through decades of touring with a bone disease, sued the band for allegedly forcing him out, gaslighting him and slashing his prop. Yes, the man who suffered quietly while the rest of the band treated their organs like rental cars was allegedly treated like an inconvenient wrinkle in their comeback. After announcing his retirement from touring, because playing guitar with a spinal fusion is slightly challenging, Mick expected respect. Instead, he claims they staged rehearsals without him, faked his playing with backing tracks, and tried to cut him out of his share. That's not just betrayal. That's workplace abuse with a kick drum. The lawsuit dragged out all the juicy details: financial manipulation, playback accusations, and enough drama to make a Real Housewives reunion look tame. The band denies everything, of course. But even if half of it's true, congratulations. You've officially turned on the one guy who never peed on a hotel lobby or punched a cameraman. For a band named after a circus, they sure know how to treat the bearded lady like yesterday's sideshow. Backing tracks debacle. Oh, look, Mötley Crüe's 2022 stadium tour, where the only thing louder than the music was the sound of fans booing their lazy reliance on pre-recorded tracks. Mick Mars, the band's own guitar wizard, spilled the tea in a lawsuit, claiming the crew leaned so hard on backing tracks they might as well have been lip-syncing at a karaoke bar. Picture it. Thousands of fans paying top dollar to watch a glorified jukebox while Vince Neil air guitars his vocals. Sin count: 1 for cheating fans, 2 for thinking we wouldn't notice, and 3 for Mick having to sue to prove he's not just a human Spotify playlist. The band's defense? Crickets. Probably pre-recorded ones. This is rock and roll, not a DJ set at a wedding. Fans shelled out for raw energy, not a canned PowerPoint presentation. Mötley Crüe's stage antics were less live than a rerun of Friends. Ding! Next time, boys, plug in the guitars and sing for real, or at least hire a better sound engineer to fake it convincingly. Roach BBQ glam style. Before they were headlining arenas, Mötley Crüe was headlining the pest control circuit. In their Sunset Strip crash pad, if you can call Roach Motel with a drum kit a crash pad, the band had a full-blown insect uprising. And how did they deal with it? Not with traps? Not with bug spray? No, they grabbed lighters and hairspray and turned the apartment into a budget horror film. Nothing says future rock legends like torching cockroaches while wearing eyeliner and leather pants. It was like Home Alone. But if Kevin were an unemployed bassist with no toilet paper and a pyromania issue, you'd think this moment of desperation would be humbling, maybe even traumatic. Instead, they bragged about it for years. Because in Mötley Crüe's world, even pest extermination had to involve explosions and hair products. It's a miracle they didn't burn the whole building down. Then again, if you looked at their career trajectory, you might say they were just warming up. Roaches may survive the apocalypse, but they didn't survive 1980s glam rock pest control. VMAs Punch-Out. Cue the 1989 MTV VMAs, where Vince Neil decided to settle scores like a toddler in a sandbox. When Guns N' Roses' Izzy Stradlin allegedly roughed up Neil's ex-wife, Vince didn't write a diss track. He threw a punch. Classy move, Vince, turning the VMAs into a WWE cage match. Sin count: 1 for thinking fists solve feuds, 2 for doing it on live TV, and 3 for escalating a beef that already had more heat than a hair metal perm. The Crüe GNR rivalry was spicier than a tabloid headline, but Vince's haymaker only made him look like a wannabe Rocky Balboa with worse hair. Did he think he'd win an award for Best Brawl? Ding! The aftermath? More bad blood than a vampire soap opera, with both bands slinging mud like it was 1987. Pro tip, Vince: next time, use words, not knuckles. Or at least wait for the after party to throw down, not the red carpet. This wasn't rock and roll rebellion. It was a temper tantrum in leather pants. Axl Rose SmackDown? Vince Neil, the gift that keeps on giving us cringe. In 1991, he took to MTV News to challenge Axl Rose to a fight, because nothing screams mature rock star like demanding a public brawl. Was this a band feud or a rejected script for Rocky V? Sin count: 1 for thinking MTV was Fight Club, 2 for believing anyone cared about his macho posturing, and 3 for dragging this GNR beef into Jerry Springer territory. Vince, buddy, your vocals were already a knockout. Why risk your face? Ding. The challenge went nowhere, proving Axl was smarter than to step into Vince's delusional boxing ring. This wasn't a rock rivalry. It was a soap opera with worse acting. Fans didn't want fisticuffs, they wanted music, not a pay-per-view grudge match. Vince's tough guy act flopped harder than his solo album. Next time, channel that energy into hitting a high note. The only thing Vince knocked out was his own dignity. Shower? Nope. Picture this, two grown men, Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee, wagering actual money on who can go the longest without showering while still getting groupies. That's not just a bet, that's biological warfare. Forget about deodorant. This was the kind of filth that made tour buses smell like expired gym socks in a swamp. And the best part? Their little hygiene horror show was allegedly so rank that it helped inspire the title of Guns N' Roses' The Spaghetti Incident? Because nothing says appetite for destruction like questioning whether your bassist just ate a plate of marinara or became one. This wasn't even a one-off moment of gross-out humor. It was a badge of honor in crew culture, a full-on competition to see who could smell like roadkill the longest and still get laid. And let's be real, that says less about Mötley Crüe's charm and more about the terrifying thirst of 1980s groupies. Showering, overrated. Personal dignity, optional. Bodily stench so strong it entered music history, apparently priceless. Forget talent. These dudes were literally seducing people through layers of unwashed denim and Axe body spray's evil grandpa. Bomb threats in adult magazines at customs. When Mötley Crüe went on their first international tour in 1982, they didn't just bring amps. They brought chaos, arrests, and, stuff with adult content. During the Cruising Through Canada tour, they arrived at an Edmonton airport dressed like they'd lost a bet in Hot Topic. Full spiked leather, chains, and enough adult magazines to make TSA quit on the spot. Oh, and they staged a fake bomb threat. Because what better way to endear yourself to a foreign country than by screaming, "We're the bomb!" and actually making people think you might blow up the venue. That little stunt got them a lifetime ban from Edmonton, which is basically Canada's way of saying, even we have standards. The whole thing was less rebellious rockers and more teenagers with a firecracker. It wasn't edgy, it was embarrassing. And let's not forget, this was a PR move. Their idea of marketing was acting like meth-addled jack-o'-lanterns in customs. Honestly, the only miracle is that this wasn't the band's mugshot debut. Canada said no thanks, and we salute them. Even the Mounties were like, get these guys out of our snow. The bullet train blunder. Nikki Sixx on a Japanese bullet train, what could possibly go wrong? Oh, just everything. In 1987, while touring in Japan, a country known for its politeness, order, and, basic manners, Nikki Sixx decided it was a great idea to chuck a bottle across the train, because nothing says international diplomacy like turning a high-speed transportation system into a frat party. The bottle smacked a Japanese passenger and sparked a massive incident, resulting in manager Doc McGee getting arrested in Tokyo. Yes, their manager took the fall because apparently public endangerment was just another Tuesday for the crew. Imagine being in one of the most respectful countries on Earth and responding by throwing glass missiles mid-transit. Nikki wasn't just breaking bottles, he was shattering the unspoken agreement that Americans maybe shouldn't act like drunk toddlers abroad. Of course, no real consequences for Sixx himself. He got to strut away while his manager had to explain to Japanese authorities that the bassist was just expressing himself. Ah yes, the age-old art of expressing yourself via assault. Art, Racism, and Mars. Mick Mars is often portrayed as the quiet one in the band, but silence doesn't equal innocence. In a 1993 behind-the-scenes rehearsal video, the man of few words decided to open his mouth just long enough to say something racist. While mocking a piece of African art, Mars dropped a comment that made even the camera guy pause, likely wondering if the spinal fusion was affecting his brain now too. This wasn't locker room banter, it was straight-up ignorance broadcast on camera. And while most fans try to pretend it didn't happen, or just bury it under piles of nostalgia, it's part of the band's long and crusty history of problematic behavior. Mötley Crüe has always treated offensive behavior like a party favor. Racism, sexism, violence, you name it, they brought it backstage. But for Mick, the supposed mature one, to casually throw in a racial jab just proves that the toxic sludge didn't stop at the drum kit. It leaked all the way to the guy in the back with the mysterious stare and broken spine. Turns out, even the silent ones have garbage to say. And in this band, that's saying something. The Leather Pants Incident. Vince Neil, lead screecher of Mötley Crüe, lover of hairspray, and apparently defender of leather pants to the death. In 1981, during one of their early performances, a fan dared to spit on Vince's sacred trousers. Big mistake. Vince launched himself off the stage like a glittery linebacker and straight up attacked the guy. Yes, he body slammed a concert goer over a spit-splattered outfit like he was defending his honor in medieval times. Forget security, forget professionalism. This was 80s glam justice. But let's pause for a second. The fan was definitely out of line. But Vince responded like a WWE villain in a mascara commercial. It wasn't the last time Vince would get violent with someone in the audience, or the press, or women, or other band members. But it was a nice little preview of the rage monster behind the glam. This wasn't just punk energy, it was I've been awake for 3 days and forgot what empathy feels like energy. Vince's ego, even in 1981, was too fragile for spit, but apparently just durable enough to survive multiple arrests, a manslaughter case, and singing off key for decades. Kiss us goodbye. Getting fired from a rock tour is one thing. Getting fired by Kiss, a band that performs in face paint and platform boots, is a whole other level of you're too much. In the early 1980s, Mötley Crüe was booted from opening for Kiss because of, you guessed it, their over-the-top backstage behavior. Now let's pause. This is Kiss we're talking about. If they think you party too hard, you're not a rebel. You're a liability. Reports from the time say the Crüe's antics included trashed dressing rooms, booze-fueled chaos, and an inability to follow any semblance of a schedule. Shocker. It's like inviting a raccoon to your birthday party and then getting mad when it knocks over the cake. Kiss wasn't just worried about the band's behavior, they were worried about themselves being upstaged by these eyeliner-covered fireballs with no volume knob. Getting fired from a tour for being too wild in the 80s is basically earning a platinum badge in rock irresponsibility. The Crüe didn't just burn bridges. They set fire to the whole arena and asked if the flames came with a record deal. The Nikki Sixx Clone theory. What do you do when your band's behavior is already too unhinged for logic? You get sued by a guy claiming to be your clone. In 1988, a man named Matthew Tripp filed a lawsuit claiming that he, not Nikki Sixx, was the real bassist of Mötley Crüe from 1983 to 1987. According to Tripp, he was secretly hired to replace Nikki Sixx after a car crash. And in true sci-fi fashion, he claimed to have written hits like Girls, Girls, Girls while living in the shadows. Was this a publicity stunt? A confused fan? A time traveler from a parallel universe? We may never know, because Trippy eventually dropped the case without any real evidence, but not before it made headlines and confused absolutely everyone. Mötley Crüe, for their part, dismissed it with a mix of eye rolls and sarcasm, which, let's be honest, is their natural state of being. But the fact that someone even thought this lawsuit could stick just shows how chaotic the Crüe's history already was. When your career is so messy that a guy impersonating you for 4 years sounds plausible, you might want to rethink your PR strategy. Metallica? Who? If there's one thing Mötley Crüe loves more than hairspray and power chords, it's a good old-fashioned band feud. Their beef with Metallica started in 1982 and has been aging like milk ever since. It began when Lars Ulrich criticized Mötley Crüe for lip-syncing, which, let's be honest, isn't the wildest accusation given Vince Neil's live performances often sound like a karaoke machine on fire. In response, Nikki Sixx called Lars a no-talent punk and mocked his drumming, looks, and probably his lunch choices too. This wasn't just professional shade. It was a full-on insult parade with drumsticks. Things simmered for years, with occasional jabs in interviews, snide remarks and memoirs, and enough passive-aggressive energy to power a high school hallway. The Crüe's legacy is loud, leather-clad, and proud. But this feud, it was petty, public, and endless. Like watching two aging wrestlers argue over who had the better entrance music. Metallica eventually moved on to play stadiums, while Mötley Crüe moved on to play over backing tracks. Maybe it's time to bury the hatchet, or at least stop sharpening it with Twitter posts and decades-old bitterness. Orca activist, apparently. In 2010, Tommy Lee, yes, that Tommy Lee, took a break from flipping upside down on drum kits to pen a very serious letter to SeaWorld. Why? Because he was outraged over their treatment of orcas. That's right. Tommy Lee, the guy whose life is basically one long episode of Don't Try This at Home, suddenly discovered morality through marine biology. He compared SeaWorld's artificial insemination of an orca to his own wild past, which we won't even get into, called the practice sick and twisted, and demanded it stop. Now, animal advocacy is great, but coming from a guy who once launched himself into the crowd in a hydraulic cage while a woman danced below him in a thong, the sudden concern for decency was unexpected. It's like getting a TED Talk on restraint from a raccoon in a garbage can. Still, Tommy's heart was in the right place, somewhere between his tattoo collection and a bottle of Jack. But the whole thing reads like the pot calling the orca black and white. Tommy Lee, drummer, party legend, and apparently SeaWorld's unlikeliest whistleblower. The Burrito Cologne era. In what may be the most unholy combination of food and funk in rock history, Mötley Crüe once masked the scent of groupies by rubbing egg burritos on themselves. You read that right. Not cologne, not soap, egg burritos. Specifically from Noggles, a fast food joint not known for high-end cuisine or scent-based solutions. Why did they do this? Because they didn't want their girlfriends to know they'd been busy. So naturally, the solution wasn't to shower or maybe not cheat. It was to roll around in breakfast food like confused Labradors. This wasn't even a one-time joke. It was apparently a strategy. Imagine coming home after a night of debauchery and thinking, "Yup, time to smear some scrambled eggs and salsa on my jeans." That'll throw her off. Honestly, it's less cover-up and more chemical warfare. If anything, it probably raised more questions. Why do you smell like a gas station at 8 a.m.? The logic defies science, hygiene, and human decency. Mötley Crüe, proving once again that when faced with a dilemma, they always pick the one involving food, chaos, and the worst possible solution. Hot tub on wheels. Mötley Crüe didn't just party, they invented it. Case in point, the infamous hot tub limo scene in their 1986 documentary Mötley Crüe, Uncensored. It featured Vince Neil lounging in the back of a stretch limo with a bubbling hot tub and strippers. Because apparently a regular limo just wasn't disgusting enough. You had to add warm, recycled water and questionable life choices into the mix. This wasn't just a transportation vehicle, it was a biohazard on wheels. Hot tubs are already sketchy when stationary. Now imagine one zooming down Sunset Boulevard with 3 rock stars and a fog of cheap champagne. And yes, this was presented as aspirational. Look how far we've come. Far from roaches and egg burritos, sure, but straight into health code violations. It was less luxury and more bachelor party end times edition. Vince probably got out more pickled than relaxed. But that's Mötley Crüe for you. Why be normal when you can literally marinate in your own debauchery on the way to your next gig? Tommy's helicopter Havoc. Tommy Lee, the human equivalent of a tornado in a tattoo parlor, once thought, why drive when you can fly? In 1999, he rented a helicopter to shuttle him to a gig, only to get into a screaming match with the pilot mid-flight over, get this, where to land. Sin count. 1 for renting a chopper like a Bond villain, 2 for arguing at 5,000 feet, 3 for thinking he's the boss of aviation. Ding! The pilot nearly ditched him in a field, probably hoping Tommy would drum his way back to Earth. This wasn't rockstar swagger, it was a toddler tantrum with a rotor blade. Only Mötley Crüe could turn a helicopter ride into a near crash over ego. Tommy's lucky he didn't end up on a no-fly list, or a no-brain list. Next time, take an Uber, dude. Or at least don't yell at the guy keeping you airborne. Mötley Crüe, where even the skies aren't safe from their special brand of chaos. And there you have it. For all their disasters, drama, and deodorant-optional living, Mötley Crüe still gave us wild anthems and unforgettable rock and roll mayhem. What do you think of Mötley Crüe? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.